Thanks for listening to Creative Control. While I have you here, please consider supporting Youth Empowerment and Support Services, otherwise known as YES. Based in Edmonton, Alberta, YES provides immediate and low-barrier overnight and day shelter, temporary supportive housing, and individualized wraparound supports for young people aged 15 to 24. They work collaboratively within a network of care focused on the prevention of youth homelessness by providing youth with the necessary supports to stabilize their housing, improve their well-being, build life skills, connect with community, and avoid re-entry into homelessness. Learn more about how to donate or otherwise support YES by visiting yess.org.
Hey, this is Nicole calling from Hamilton, and I needed to let everyone know that I really proudly support Vish and Creative Control. I have for many years, I will for many more, as long as he keeps delivering these amazing interview podcasts. When you hear one of Vish's interviews, you think he's known this guest for years, they're good friends, but the truth is he approaches every interview, whether it's sort of up-and-coming indie artists or established icons or like famous, intimidating comedians with a really deep, genuine curiosity, as though he's never met this person, and the same really warm candor, as though he's known them forever. I think it really lends to a great chat, no matter who he's talking to, and for that reason, I think you should throw Vish, $1 a month? He's got jokes. The jokes make it worth it. Support Creative Control on Patreon.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today. I'm Vish's wife, and remember, when you name a dog Janet or Timothy, you are dragging humanity down just a little bit.
No Age is an inventive, noisy rock band consisting of longtime friends Randy Randall and Dean Allen Spunt, who are based in Los Angeles, California. Since 2005, No Age has released countless singles and EPs, and 6 albums, including 3 for Sub Pop Records. Since 2018, No Age has been working with Drag City Records, who released their latest album on September 16th, 2022. It's called People Helping People, and it prompted Randy and I to connect for a great talk about life in Southern California and a fond memory of No Age playing one of their last pre-pandemic shows in frigid Edmonton, Alberta, taking 5-minute flights throughout New Zealand, how Ian Mackay, Fugazi, and Discord Records were a massive early influence on him and Dean, why Sonic Youth's musical freakouts altered him and inspired more than a few experiments with electricity, the sound and process behind making People Helping People, which is the first self-produced No Age album ever, upcoming tour dates, other future plans, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One Network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control, with additional support from Blackbird Music, a well-stocked record store with locations in Edmonton and Calgary, Alberta, and friendly staff who will happily help you find whatever it is you're looking for. Say you want the new No Age album, People Helping People. Well, you just go over there to blackbird.ca and contact them and see if they can't get you a copy of that. I bet they can. Oh, plus in-kind support from Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 717 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented Randy Randall from No Age, with your host, me, Vish Khanna.
I'll stand by. I got locked out of the moon. I waited all till you were through. I can't wait, I just can't wait. I can't wait, I just can't wait.
Hi, Randy. How's it going?
Good, Vish. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, in the country of Canada. Where where in the world are you today?
I am in Southern California, just north of the city of Los Angeles, and it's very hot here. We're having a heat wave, record heat wave.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I actually just spoke with another California resident for my show just yesterday. As we're speaking, as people are hearing this, it's not yesterday, but as you and I are speaking, Randy, it was yesterday, and they didn't talk about the heat. They just said they hated the weather this week. So the whole week has been bad. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's just kind of, just sort of everything got hot and then even got humid, which is unusual for Southern California. We always like to say, it's a dry heat. 110 dry heat is not as bad as 110 wet heat.
Sorry, I know that's true of, that used to be a running joke about like Arizona, the arid desert areas. California is by the ocean. I would think it would be humid. You're saying it's not normally humid?
No, not normally. Yeah, I mean, there's a special zone within about 10 miles of the beach where it's always 20 degrees cooler, and the houses are also about $10 million more expensive in that area.
Yeah,
and then and everything past that is more or less a desert-ish climate. What did we call? Oh, we had a native plant person out to our house, and we just call it. It's a chaparral landscape, is what it's actually called. So it's a type of desert. It's a high desert kind of feeling.
I see. Okay, now how long have you lived? I think you said north of Los Angeles. How long have you lived in? How long have you lived in that area?
Yeah, we're just coming up on 10 years. My wife and I bought a house up here, just kind of a little bit out of the city, up in the hills, and it's been about 10 years. We got 2 kids. I got a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old. So we sort of planned to start a life here, and now a life is progressing. Life is happening.
That sounds lovely. I have 2 children as well, 11 and 7. So kind of close.
Oh my gosh,
similar age range. I guess you got 5 years. I got 4. Yeah, it's something. Where did you move to Los Angeles from?
So I grew up in the Inland Empire area of Southern California, which is about an hour, maybe an hour and a half outside of the major metropolitan area. It's sort of, again, more desert suburbs. LA doesn't really ever stop till you for miles and miles. The sprawl of humanity just goes on and on. You go from one small enclave to another without there really being any known borders, just sort of streams of houses go on for hours and hours in Southern California. So I was, just off. So we use the freeway names to kind of delineate, what areas where you're at on the map, where you're at on the grid.
Yes.
And so our freeway was the 60 freeway, which put us, out closer towards Pomona and Riverside, which is Fontana, which is kind of. Like I said, you have the $10 million houses by the beach. Then you have the, sort of metropolitan zone. And then as you get further out, California becomes pretty much like the rest of middle America.
Yeah.
In my case, growing up, it was, pickup trucks and Limp Bizkit.
Yes.
Where there's a sort of known Southern California cool guy, you're progressive, everybody's, movie stars. Well, no, the movie stars are out there. They're at the water. Yeah. And then the people that work for a living for the studios live in the metropolitan area. And then you get out to the suburbs and everybody's just like everyone else. We grew up with all the bad fashion, the bad political views, the bad, influences of sort of middle America. That the parts you think are the worst of it.
Right.
We have it here in California as well.
It's not all glitz, glamour, and liberalism, is what you're saying.
Right, that's a great way of saying it. But, there was a lot of diversity, which I do think was, where we do differ from other parts of the American sort of populace. Even out there, there was a blue ribbon school, which would mean like a well-regarded education system in my town. Mm-hmm. And I think that brought a lot of diversity in immigrant parents. Like I mentioned, there was kids of Indian and Pakistani descent, as well as, Chinese, Taiwanese, Filipino, and then as well as just Mexican American sort of population. Nice. So that I do give our little enclave credit for being a very diverse and fairly harmonious melting pot.
Yeah, I was asking my the aforementioned California guests about what they thought of living there, and they mostly had good things to say. I was saying that we tend to, from the outside, tend to see it as a pretty progressive state. That does really interesting stuff, and it challenges the status quo in terms of environmental measures and things like that. However, they did say socioculturally it's a bit of a mess. There's a huge problem with unhoused people and those sorts of things that aren't really addressed or discussed as much. And so it sounds to me, not to be reductive, but that does sound like basically everywhere. There's great parts about it. Well, sorry, that can't be true. Not everywhere has great parts about it, but there are, what I'm hearing from you, and I think from that guest, there are a lot of great things to celebrate about where you live, but there are problems. And I mean, the other thing I often hear, you mentioned all the freeways and highways, I often hear it's not a very, it's definitely not a walkable place per se, but I also hear it's not really a drivable place because it's so congested and the transit system isn't great. Is any of that check out for you?
Yeah. I mean, I growing up, out in the suburbs, the car culture and cars were a vital part of my, my ascendancy into adulthood, or my, matriculation into adulthood. Maybe I didn't really ascend. I just stumbled from one stage of life into the next. But cars as a teenager were sort of your form of freedom. Mm-hmm. All right, got the license. Or your friends have a car. Maybe if you don't have it, you become a 15, someone gets a learner's permit, or you're 14, 15, and you're older. You have friends who are older, who are 16, and then now you're off and you're zipping around, and it's like the gates are open wide. This is also pre-cell phone, pre-social media, where or GPS or tracking, this kind of technological surveillance. But anyway, we ran kind of loose. We had the cars, and now we just were off and about. And for me, the big part of that, which probably gets us closer to our topic of the day, I am not a city planner or a socioeconomic expert in any way. But once I got cars and friends got cars, we got to start going to shows.
Absolutely,
and that's where I was really exposed to music and stuff. And so that was the kind of the big aha moment, and it was really due to our car system here, that we all the teenagers had cars and we were going to go see live music, and that really changed my life.
100%.
Really put me on a path that was where I'm at now, playing music. But yeah, it was huge. It was huge for us, getting in the cars, driving out. You didn't even know who was playing the shows, but it was something to do. Somebody knew somewhere, or backyard parties or something. And so I would jump in a lot of cars with skateboards and, a baseball hat on, and just see where I ended up.
100%. I can't really begrudge car culture in that regard either, because growing up, I grew up in Ontario. I grew up in Cambridge, Ontario, which is about an hour, and nowadays, depending on traffic, it can be 4 hours from Toronto, but it should be about an hour and 15 minutes from Toronto. And yeah, as soon as we had cars, we would go there for shows, or Cambridge didn't have good record stores. We'd have to go to like the university towns nearby, Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph. And so that's where record store is huge for me as well. So yeah, I can't really begrudge it. To your point, I didn't feel free as a musician, as a music fan, until we could drive around. So yeah, it sucks. I guess what I'm saying is we have ruined the planet with our luxury recreational, pursuits, and now no one does it as much or something. I don't know. I have no idea. Anyway, to your point, let's get to No Age, because there's going to be people listening and even people talking to you right now who don't know the full story about the origin story of No Age. And before I go too much further, congratulations on this wonderful new record, People Helping People, which we've kind of alluded to a little bit, sort of, in community
yes.
thinking.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say just before we open that chapter of the book, I do want to say the last show, or second to last show we played prior to the pandemic and the lockdown was in Edmonton.
Oh, are you kidding me?
We played a great festival in Edmonton. No, we came up for 3 shows in Calgary, and then we had rented a car, or the promoters rented a car for us. We played Calgary, and then we drove up to Edmonton.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And then drove back to Calgary, and that was the day that Kobe Bryant. I remember we stopped off at a health food store to get a coffee and a vegan pastry or something, and we looked and we saw our phones like, oh no, Kobe had just died. And so that was January of 2020.
Oh, so you
and then. Yeah, so we had just been up there. So yeah, so I think about Edmonton quite a lot when we're booking shows now. We haven't really played a proper show since then. We've done some kind of impromptu sort of house party things and jams with friends. Yeah. But not a proper sort of I would say professional rock and roll show. but yeah, Edmonton was great.
I'm very happy you brought that up because I've been feeling a little self-conscious. We moved here basically January 2020 from Ontario. Wife's from here originally. Family, her parents and brothers are all here and all that kind of thing. And jobs beckoned, and the housing market was prohibitive where we were, and blah, blah, blah. So we moved here January 2020. Instantly a pandemic almost. I got to go to some... Was the festival you played, was it called like Winterruption or something? Do you remember what it was called? The one...
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I feel a little... there's a Googleable solution to this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great show in a big kind of brick building. Where it was up on the second story. There was a cool kind of pub and tavern down on the bottom story.
Okay.
And
that's cool.
And there was like 2 venues in one, like 2 stages in one sort of vibe.
Oh, it might have been the Starlight Room, maybe.
Very cool. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yep, that sounds like it. So yeah, really, but we had a great time. We stayed there, but again, January in Edmonton is very different than January in Los Angeles. You know, we were driving, and, you know, again because we're Californians, we were like, oh yeah, well, let's get a car, we'll drive around.
Yeah.
But there's ice and there's
snow,
it's
I'm not looking forward.
cold.
I'm not looking forward to the winter. Last one was tough on me, I must admit. But what I was going to say is I've been feeling self-conscious because of my experience. I recently said to someone that they are from New Zealand. They were on the show and they live in New Zealand. And I was just relating, like living in a relatively remote part of the world means that you cherish concerts and events maybe a bit more. When people come through, you're there. And I kind of said something like Edmonton was like that. And I felt badly because it's a big Canadian city. Bands like you do come through. And I have just sort of not been going to stuff since we moved here because there's been the pandemic and I haven't felt that comfortable. I've gone to like a couple of things. So all I'm getting at is I just wanted to. This has nothing to do with you. I'm glad you liked Edmonton, and I will say people do come to Edmonton. It's not as remote as maybe I mean, at the same time, No Age is booking a tour. You're probably going to play Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver for sure. But the flyover part of Canada, if you will, the same as like the middle America. You're not as likely necessarily. You guys would. You tour hard. But some people would skip it. That's probably true, right?
It's tough. I mean, I feel like, you know, the promoters are aware of this type of scenario as well, so they'll put on these festivals and they'll invite people, you know, to sort of come. I think that's really been our experience. The routing, you know, for the land big drives of you know, it's tough. It's tough to get everywhere in a car, but you know, and especially on a Sunday night, you know. But you would, I don't know. I think it's really comes down to drive times with a lot of things. I remember asking people, like, because you could kind of, I'm looking at the map here, you could do Calgary off of maybe Boise or Bozeman or something. Right. You know, it's a good 12. Yeah, you really don't want to be in a van more than 12 hours between shows, and that's where it just gets tricky. If you're within that, you know, that if you're within 12 hours of another city, chances are, you know, you hopefully get somebody. 5 hours even better. Right? That's kind of the idea. So you try to leapfrog from one spot to another, because Vancouver to Calgary, that looks like you're going over a mountain pass, and that's maybe about 18 hours.
That seems
16.
Is that much? I'm still not. That feels like a lot.
I could be wrong. I'm adding an extra 5 because of mountain.
I've done
mountainese. They usually
I've done that touring myself, and I can't even remember because it's a blur. But it's long. Yes, that's about right. I think that you are actually right. Yeah. So all this to say, I mean, I'm happy you had a good experience in Alberta, and that bodes well for you potentially coming back at some point.
We'd love to. We'd love to. Yes, yeah. Please, anybody that's listening to this and is throwing shows anywhere in Canada or any remote places, if you think you can get enough of your friends together to make it all make sense, you know what I mean? Just in the sense of, like, you know, we don't want to, you know, drive for 2 days and play there for 5 friends, unless they're all very wealthy friends and want to pay us a lot of money for our troubles. But if you know you got you got 50 to 100 people who'd be interested in seeing us, please contact us. We are very open and contactable when we want to come to your town.
You need an audience of 5 people who each own those $10 million houses. I think that's what you want.
There we go.
They
yes.
just when they pass the hat, it's a full hat. Yeah, that's what
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We've never done one of those, but I believe those do exist somewhere. I've heard tale of those weird private shows for
Shadow
things.
Underground Network. Yeah.
But you know what was fun though? You bring up, and I know I'm going on so many tangents. I'm going to talk about this record here, but I will say you brought up New Zealand, and what was really fun last time we were in New Zealand. We were very fortunate, to get to. I do not discount any opportunities to travel and see the world. I feel like they've filled my life beyond any of my craziest imaginations or hopes or dreams of being able to see places in the world. I've put my eyes on things and experienced things that only because of music. So I'm very thankful and grateful for those experiences. Yeah. And this isn't a bad story, but we were in New Zealand and it was really fun. I think what the promoter did was sort of this exact thing. He said, "Hey, everybody in New Zealand, we have a band here who can put together, who wants to put the shows together." And so we actually got to do, I think we did 6 shows just in New Zealand. And which is incredible, because again, it's not a huge country, but we were fortunate enough that people were, could get enough people together, and we did a little fly-in. So basically, all they had to do was buy us the plane ticket from the city before, and then whatever money came from the door. It's not. We're not outrageously. We don't expect much, but just pay for us to get there. Put us up for the night. We stayed at but anyway, we stayed. We played at a kombucha brewery. And it had like a little vegan cafe in the front, and then they brewed their own kombucha in the back, and they had a little stage set up there. So the flight I think was literally 5 minutes. It was from North Island to South Island, and it was a small town, but a 5-minute plane, and the airports were very small. It was a very small plane, and we got on the plane, and I took a video of it. I just put my camera up against the window and just filmed. We literally from you're there an hour before, so you got to go get all your bags on and stuff, and then you land. You got to pick up your bags. But the flight was like you were up in the air, you go over the water, and you can see the next island as soon as you take off, and then you come right back down. And we landed, and this great couple picked us up and took us to their kombucha brewery, and we ate great food, and we played to maybe that was 40 or 50 people who were curious. Not everybody knew who we were, and then we stayed at their house that night, and the next morning got on another plane and jumped around. So it was beautiful.
That's
it's
lovely.
A great way of seeing a country that not many people really get to visit like that. And we loved it. And then I think we got all the way down to Dunedin. It was like one of the southernmost towns there, and home of Flying Nun Records, and it was beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Well, that's lovely. A 5-minute plane ride, by the way, these days I believe is known as the Taylor Swift commute. So you guys are living the high life there for a little bit. No, that's amazing. The guest I'm referring to is Brett McKenzie. Are you familiar with Flight of the Conchords?
Oh, yeah. Of course, yeah. We were label mates for a time at Sub Pop.
That's correct. So Brett was saying that the funny thing about bands coming from away to New Zealand is they're often exhausted, because it's a bit of an add-on. They play Australia, and then they're so disoriented and wiped out. He said his experience seeing bands was they often just looked completely wiped out. And like, what are we doing? It's like, oh my God. And so I love that you had such a positive. And I think he also said they often would just play Auckland or Wellington. And then if one or the other sometimes, like we were talking about sort of bigger artists, I guess, like David Bowie or somebody, right? Anyway, he was like, they might play one or the other, and you decide if it's worth driving all the way across the country to see the band. Anyway, that's lovely. I think you probably had it the best. So that's awesome. I also think this is a nice segue, I think, into the can-do DIY ethos that I think your band in particular is sort of known for. And so I bring us back to the beginning if we can.
Thank you. Yes, no problem. Look at that bridge.
I'm trying.
Walk over this bridge together.
Yeah. It's like a 5-minute flight. So, can we talk about a little bit the origin story of No Age?
Oh, yes. Where did No Age start?
Yeah, with you and Dean. I'm curious because, again, those of us who know the history a little bit know what I'm saying is true. You guys have long been sort of self-propelling. You believe in what you're doing. You believe in ideas. But where did this all come from? Tell me about the origin of No Age.
Yeah, so I met Dean going to shows. Like I said, I was a very avid show goer in my teen and 20 years, and I just was, I was. It was like a religious experience. I think seeing a band, and still is, seeing a band and just kind of being washed with loud sounds and just the excitement, and the viscera of, being in an audience and so I would go to shows all the time, and Dean was of a similar sort of mindset. He was always going to shows and driving around Southern California trying to find new bands, new interesting things to do, and so we met through a friend, and we kind of said, you guys seem like you like similar weird music. You guys should play together.
Yeah.
And so I'd always seen, but Dean also was he was very much the self-propelled, DIY person. He was already putting on shows as well as like writing zines with his friends, and he would go stand out in front of shows and sell zines, sell his like kind of poetry and sort of photography and sort of thing. And so he was very socially confident, and I was a little bit more introspective, I think. But Dean stood out because I would see him around in front of shows, passing out flyers, selling stuff, and just kind of being a cool guy, where I was a little bit more bookish and just was excited to be amongst people.
But you were both at the same shows? Like you saw him doing
Yes.
this at shows? So just before we move past that, because I feel like there's something in there that might have inspired Dean to think he could do those things. What kinds of shows would you see him at, like in terms of who was playing, or what was the milieu that made him think, I can do what I'm doing out front, and also we can be a part of this culture? Can you dial into that?
Yeah, I mean, just from knowing Dean as long as I've known him, I can't speak exactly for him. I'm
Sure,
not
of
in
course.
his head, but
Sure.
but as much as I've known him, I think he really embraced, I think the Discord, Minor Threat, Fugazi, Ian MacKaye mantra of really, of doing it yourself, and I think he springboarded, that was sort of his launching point. Like, oh yeah, look, he said, start your own band, here's a label I put out my friends. He's like, oh, I'm going to start a label. I'm going to start booking shows. So I think he really was inspired by that,
Wow.
that Ian MacKaye spirit.
So I don't know if you know this about me, but that's my favorite. So that Fugazi's my favorite band, and I saw them a bunch. And,
okay.
And Ian is definitely one of my main lodestars, or whatever you want to say. And
Yes, right. I think for a lot of us of this era. How old are you?
I got a few years on you. I'm going to be what am I right now? I'm 44 right now. So
okay. There you go.
Become
41.
Oh, you mentioned that. So like I said, I got a couple years on you. Yeah, no, that band and getting to know those guys has been such a huge inspiration to me. Just
have you had Ian on the show?
Yeah, Ian's been on this. Yeah, Ian and I have done dozens of, well, not dozens, but probably 12, 15 interviews over the last 20 years, and been on this particular show twice. Yeah, he has always been very friendly and kind to me, and we have lots of mutual friends. And yeah, I'm still rather in touch with, I've talked about this on the show before, but yes, Guy and I often have basketball text exchanges. We watch basketball together in a sense, and we're like, "Did you see that? What the hell was that?" And so we kind of like, we do. Yeah, and Brendan and I are friendly still, and Joe I don't talk to as much.
Amazing.
Anyway, yeah, those guys. Sorry, I didn't mean to do this. I just wanted you to know.
No, it's great.
Absolute same spirit as Dean there, like that. For some reason, that's why I asked, because about what the things were that you were both at, because that's where the possibility is. When you see or attend something like that, or see what someone's done, that can get you going. And Drag City, I will say, I have a similar feeling about. I just had a call with Will Oldham the other day just to catch up, and like Will and David Berman is a huge one for me too. Like those kinds of folks who just are like showed me. And sounds like it showed Dean what could be possible in our own lives through stuff they did. I just want to I'm sorry, this is a long interjection. I just want to say that's the same. I'm the same. Like this is all.
Yep.
We feel like we're self-propelled, but it's really seeing, for me anyway, other people do exemplary things, and then I think I can try to do something like that. So it sounds like maybe Dean had that same frame of mind. Is that what you're getting at?
I think so, yeah, but it's interesting because I think I think there's a certain amount of external engine that sort of comes
course,
to that.
yeah.
The idea, it's like I could book shows, I could book, or I could put out records. Like these are things I could release outside of myself. Where I think I kind of came to Fugazi somewhere in later high school. I think my earlier, so Dean kind of had a Minor Threat and,
Yep.
early Discord sort of stuff. That was his, sort of jumping off point for a lot of music, and the thing that really was the lightning bolt to his head. And I had a little bit of a noisier, introspective sort of a launch into music and creative interests. I discovered Sonic. Well, obviously Nirvana was sort of
Yep.
the star of that time, and so had Nirvana, and I think through Nirvana and sort of reading music press, I discovered Sonic Youth, and that was the band that I think really tweaked my brain somewhere in adolescence, about 8th grade, 13 going into 14. And that was the sort of like, oh, it's not just a flannel and a pair of ripped jeans. This isn't just a look you could buy somewhere. The Sonic Youth thing, I think, embodied a change in perspective or point of view about the nature of music, and they're not even notes. It's sounds. It's all sound is valid. It was kind of abstract expressionist sort of approach. I don't think I clearly identified it at that point, but it was something from Jimi Hendrix, who I'd kind of heard on the classic radio, and like, oh, there's feedback. I'm like, wait, these guys did but that was the intro and the outro or something, the freak out at the end. But I was like, these guys make a whole song just out of the freak out parts, or that's sort of how my brain interpreted
Totally
it
visceral, right?
At that
It
time,
was visceral.
Yeah.
Hard.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there was, but it somehow was still moving, and I can see it now. I understand, the structure of it, but at the age, I think I had Goo on tape, and it upset me to the point where like, this isn't allowed. This isn't, you can't just do this. This is not that I had any classical training or any mind, but I just think my mindset didn't have a space, and I'm sure it's true for a lot of people. A lot of people's minds aren't. There's not a room that has space in it to listen to enjoy, to allow that type of music in. So it's quickly associated. It lights up other parts of your brain and go, oh, that sounds like the sound of a car backing up, or that sounds like a train wreck, or these kind of things, those euphemisms people say, but because there's no language for it, there's not a spot. Yeah,
Those harmonic chords in Dirty Boots. That's like one of the first things I learned how to play on guitar. After the first thing I think I learned how to properly play on guitar was "Come as You Are" by Nirvana.
Ooh,
and then
that's a good
then
one.
I was I think I may have played it wrong, but that's the first time I'm
Of
like,
course.
wait a minute, that's all this is. And then I just told this story the other day. I think the next thing might have been the song "Money," like the da na 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 na.
Very similar to "Come as You Are,"
Sort of
right?
similar.
Yeah.
So those are the first things. But then someone showed
It's a
me
walking bass line.
Yeah, someone who is better than me showed me how to play what I think. Maybe I'm saying this wrong, but I think they're harmonic chords up and down the neck.
Octave.
Octave. That's
It's
what
like
I'm
an
saying.
octave.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
octave.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I knew I was
Yeah.
using the wrong word. Yeah, those octave chords. Yeah, I learned that.
Yep.
And blew my mind. Like that didn't seem I didn't know what that was, and the notion that, and again, I'm not a skilled guitar player, but for those who don't know what an octave is, in my case, the way I will explain it is, it's like playing a power chord, but you don't the string. There's a string between the two that you're fretting that is open. Is that a way to explain it?
Yeah.
You right? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a low note and a high note.
Right.
It's basically it's the same note, one full scale removed.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's
but they're also I think what you're trying to dance around. They're very easy to play. It's two fingers.
Yes.
And you can
yes.
sort of play.
But,
it. Yeah.
but you're playing in that song. I think you're playing three strings with two fingers are fretting. You got a finger fretting one string, finger fretting another. I think it's the A string, and then anyway, I'm not very good at this.
Yeah.
Anyway, I learned that, and I was like, what the? All I really want to get at here, Randy, is you and I and Dean sound exactly the same.
Same page.
Exact
Yes.
same. Sonic Youth, seeing them
Yeah.
in like the mid 90s changed my life, and we would go see them. That's one of the bands when I was talking about going to Toronto to see shows. We saw Sonic Youth so many times as teenagers. I saw Fugazi when I was 17. Like, Can you imagine? Like, just like...
I can exactly. I saw Fugazi when I was also 17.
Yeah.
I can exactly imagine that.
So you saw them probably, by the sounds of it, based on our year, you saw them around 98, I think.
Yep.
I saw them in...
17, 98.
That's right. I saw them in 95 for the first time, and then I saw them 5 times when I was in 1998, so I was 21. Anyway, they... all I'm getting at is, sorry, I keep interjecting. All I wanted is, we're the same.
Good.
We're the same people.
Conversation.
We'd probably be friends if we lived in the same town. We'd go to the shows. Sorry, please continue.
Yep.
I forget what the
course.
thread was, but please, hopefully you can pick it up.
Yeah. So the upstartness of it all. So I think what I was alluding to is Dean had a very extroverted thing, which is awesome, and it helps our band and helps me in my life still to this day. His amount of extroversion. My introversion, I think, kind of resulted in me getting a 4-track in 1994, and so in Sonic Youth also led into things like My Bloody Valentine and Yo La Tango and Tortoise, or things of this kind, and Pavement and things like that. And so I was very turned on to a type of music that didn't necessarily have a punk ethos, and there wasn't necessarily a self-releasing label thing, but there was a self-recording and self-writing. Like, you could just write any weird song you wanted. And so I got very excited about just kind of collecting junk, keyboards and just weird, amps and guitars, and my dad was also an electrician, so I had a certain amount of fearlessness with just plugging stuff in and see what happens. I wasn't afraid. If something caught fire, we could fix it still. I wasn't so afraid of that kind of stuff. And
wait a minute, is your dad being an electrician genetic, or you're just like, if I blow something up, Dad's nearby? What do you?
Yes, right. No, he would set little. We would build little circuits, as a kid, as science experiments on the coffee table. Like, here's a 9-volt battery. Here's the wire, and it goes to a light bulb. Look, when you press these wires together, the light lights up. So I understood the basic idea of it, and was afraid enough of major electricity, but not, I don't know. It was I guess I mean to say that when someone said, "Oh, this thing's broken, I'm going to throw it away," I'd be like, hold on, let me take it. And if I couldn't fix it, my dad could fix it. And so I would collect weird little things, and just in the sense of experimental sounds, like maybe it's going to make a weird sound.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll spend an hour fucking with this thing. Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss, but I'll spend an hour messing with this thing and seeing what happens. And you know what I mean? Just to see what sounds it would make. I'm so glad I got to an age where I could afford new equipment, and so I wasn't constantly. When I got to a point where I don't have to rewire things all the time and solder, and I just like, I'm just going to buy a new one. Yeah, it's just easier.
Well, as someone growing up around all that talk and experimentation with electricity, I imagine, based on the bands you just described or alluded to, most of whom, by the way, also have been on this show or I'm a fan of, so that's pretty amazing in itself. For me, again, we're friends. My other point, my point though, is someone interested even basically in electricity, I wonder if that's a gateway to distortion, texture. It sounds like you were almost more interested in texture than I don't know how else to put it, theory, if you will. Like, what are these? What kinds of sounds, different kinds of sounds, can these conventional things make? And if I'm gonna put a bow on this, isn't it crazy that they all are plugged into the wall? The wall is the same, but anything I add to it changes the electricity in a sense. Like, the juice has been changed by what. This is getting too hokey, but you know what I'm saying? There's something going on there probably.
Yeah. So I didn't want to learn how to write a song, but I wanted to learn how to make crazy sounds.
Yes.
I think was my early sort of lightning bolt moment. And again, like I say, and I guess this is in reference to the idea of, where Dean wanted to put out records. He wanted to book a show for his friends. I didn't know. I had no interest, and still to this day, I don't really have a ton of interest or knowledge or excitement about that kind of stuff. It's like, but you could bring me you want to talk about speakers or old, equipment. Like, I could talk about that for hours.
Yeah.
And whereas Dean may just be like, I don't know, that thing's broken or that thing's weird. So it's good. We balance each other out in that regard.
Yeah.
I'll talk about microphones and guitars and pedals and electricity, but as a kid, it's like I had things like, so the idea, I had little bad practice amps that worked kind of and sounded weird, and you'd have to hit it, and then I would I would figure out, like, oh, if you plug in the input to the headphone out, it would create this kind of like what's the right word for, I'm spacing on the correct term of it, but it would create this feedback loop,
right,
basically.
Yeah.
And so I just plugged the amp into itself, and it was, whee, and then you turn the tone. I would kind of have this like oscillator. I guess oscillation is the idea.
Yeah.
So I was creating an oscillator with these little pad practice amps. And I remember I traded a friend a Rage Against the Machine CD for his practice amp. I was like, I got such the better deal for this. I could give a shit about Rage Against the Machine, but now I have this weird amp with the headphone out and a thing. And so
that's awesome.
And then I put screws on it, and I wore the amp as like a guitar. Yeah. So I was just playing the amp. And then I would plug that amp into then another amp and make it even louder and screechier and weirder. And if you moved the cables in and out, like halfway in, halfway out, it would make even weirder sounds.
Right.
And so I had a lot of fun with that, and then I had the 4-track, so then I could play some rudimentary chords, and then play this modulated crazy thing over it, and then eventually got a 404 sampler where I'd sample a 60s bossa nova record, and I'd have a little beat going under that, and so I had I still have them, shoeboxes full of these types of sampled noise, badly played guitar with, there's something, there was something to that. I remember hearing Animal Collective for the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, that's what I'm doing. I think they did it too. I think, Dave and Noah obviously could sing and harmonize. They were further down the pathway,
yeah.
But I recognized kindred spirits as well. Like, oh yeah, like bedroom folk noise sample jams. Of course.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That's like, and when I was shocked, I was like, people like this stuff? Like, how does this is a popular form of music? I mean, this is the weird stuff. And I think, I don't know if you've interviewed those guys, but they come from a similar sort of,
I was invited. They just played here. They just played here,
cool.
and I was invited to the show by the band, but I was not able to attend. And then I said, well, sorry. I said, I'm still not, like I said earlier. Sorry, I'll just be honest with you. I'm not going to say sorry. I think there's a lot to be concerned about. I just said, I still can't do it. I don't want to take a chance on that. And I said, hey, do you want to, while you're around, did you guys want to do like an outdoor interview somewhere? And they said, well, no, we're bubbling. I was like, okay, so you
want me to come to your show, not bubble, but I can't.
You come to the show and with a crowd of people. I'm not. It was very lovely. They're very nice. They reached out to me in the last few years to ask some questions, and I've only seen them once myself, but they heard tell of me and reached out, so it's been very nice. But no, I think. Again, I don't mean to force a segue on us, but everything you're talking about in terms of your origin story, I think is a nice enough segue into people helping people, because all that sense of experimentation and discovery, I think there's a bit of a narrative around this record about it being the first one that you guys have produced yourselves and recorded yourselves. Is that accurate, first of all?
Yes. Yeah, I think really meaning from soup to nuts, right? From top to bottom.
Yes.
This is a complete Dean and Randy joint. We did bring in our front of house engineer and all around sort of sonic compatriot Scott Cornish to give a listen and notes, on mixes, just to make sure we weren't blowing anything technically.
Yeah.
I think, wasn't, and there was a song, Tripped Out Before Scott, that is named after this particular Scott Cornish. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing of it was because he gave us some notes about how the way things technically should sound, and the frequency range and the general parameters that we weren't really, conscious of or caring of.
Yeah.
And so he gave us these notes, and then the song, just been a working title, Tripped Out, because it was a tripped out kind of drum pattern. And then he gave us notes, and I did those notes. I made, the mix according to what would sound appropriate or technically correct. And then we A-B'd them, and we decided we liked this version of the song before Scott. The one we did before. So Tripped Out Before Scott is a very literal kind of working name that we've just been calling that song. And then but we thought it sounded kind of nice as a literary kind of title. Yeah, it was super fun. So we made this whole record, and it was a weird one because we started before COVID, and then we had a studio in downtown LA where we practiced. It was kind of our headquarters, studio practice, recording, all around kind of fun hangout place. And then our friends, but we didn't own it. We rented a room there, and our friends owned the building. Our friend and his brothers. And not too long into the COVID lockdown, they just said, the world's changing. We're probably just gonna put this place up for sale pretty soon, so everybody should go ahead and get out.
Yeah.
But it was a fun spot. Like Tunde from TV on the Radio had a little studio space there, and a lot of other records have been made there. I know Kim Gordon recorded a record with Alex Nost there.
Oh, nice.
And there'd been a bunch of friends. It was a sort of all around sort of just fun place to be. So once we left there, then I very humbly asked my wife if she really needed that garage thing, the place where she parked her car, and we kept all the Christmas decorations. I was like, do you need all of it though? Like, what if I just like moved all that stuff that you don't know that I have downtown, all that equipment and guitars into our garage?
Yeah.
And she foolishly said yes. And therefore this new sort of playground man-child place, very not too different than if my 14-year-old self could have afforded all this stuff, this is exactly what my bedroom would have looked like. I remember very, very, very well. It stands out in my head as a teenager, as a 14, 15-year-old. I had a girl, we weren't dating, but she was a friend. She came over to my room and she's like, it looks like Radio Shack threw up in here. And that stuff I didn't really even have much of a bed. I remember telling my friends, like, can we get rid of all this furniture and beds and stuff? Like, I need more room for equipment and for stuff and weird things in here. And so I had like a day bed, which is kind of a small like couch, sort of thing. And I just slept with my feet through the bars by choice. It wasn't, my parents were horrified by this, but I was like, no, I don't need to sleep. I only sleep for a few hours. I wanted more time to work on stuff in here.
That's
like
incredible.
Sci-fi movie posters and a little TV with a VHS collections of weird movies and lots of recording equipment and samplers and things and stuff. So looking around now, I have all these years later, I've just come back to where I began.
Sounds like you've always been this way. That's hilarious and amazing and touching. Actually, you knew who you were.
Sad a little bit.
No, you knew who you were. I think that's good.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. And I think Dean the same could be said for him too. I think, the Dean at 14 is not too far off from where from where he's at now either. And I think there is something, and again, not to, I feel very fortunate, and there's nothing against growing up. I think that's a very mature thing to do. And I'm sure in some ways I hopefully have matured to some degree, but I've vehemently fought and held on to some young idealistic wonder, I hope, is the kind of way I look at it, and curiosity.
Absolutely.
That's ultimately what drives these things and makes a record like People Helping People. It wasn't a record we could set out to make. I don't think there's, if you had to put together a pitch deck for a project and name your references and what it would be, and this whole, I don't know if you're involved in professional creative services like that, but a lot of times, before people give you money to make something, they want to see a whole plan and a whole blueprint and a map of how this thing is going to go. And that's not at all how Dean and I have ever worked. We sort of set out with a vibe or a feel that we kind of have, or an interest in a sound or curiosity in a process. And so this record kind of is the fruit of that, our latest sort of curiosity and experimental ways of processing sounds and thinking. So we sat down and recorded at the old studio. We recorded maybe about 6 hours of just sounds. Mm-hmm. Some of it was Dean playing samples and I was affecting them, or he would affect them, and I'd play guitar and he'd affect the guitar. He'd play drums and I'd put effects on the guitar or on the drums and play along. So we just kind of collected about 6 hours of material. And from that, I think and again, it's a sort of the pendulum swing, which I think a lot of bands do. We're not unusual in that regard. But the record we did before, Goons Be Gone, was we wrote a record we wanted to go play out on the road. And so we wrote it the way we would play it. We were sort of sat down with the guitar and drums and then embellished it in overdubs and things. But mostly it was written to be played and performed, in a more straightforward traditional band context. And so because of that, we felt like, what if we just get weird with this next one? And so as often so many, good intentions, good things start out like, what if we just got weird, man? And then, but that can mean so many things to so many people and can go horribly awry in many contexts. But anyway, so we took a bunch of material, and then we'd cull it down like, okay, there's a few good ideas there, but then we were constantly, Dean is a great editor. I think one of his skills is not, as a musician, it's not often talked about, but it's the things you don't play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's an important thing. I think that all bands do, but you have to throw out the stuff that's not good.
Yeah.
And there's no slight in that. I think, I look at my role a lot of times as just generator, synthesizer. I just bring stuff and sounds and things and throw it at him, and he can weave in. He has a knack and a vision, I think, for like, yes, this, no, that, yes, this, no, that. And then that kind of helps me then go through like, cool, okay, now we've whittled it down from, 4 hours of music to now we have about 30 minutes of music. Cool. Let's see what we can do with that, and we build from there and kind of embellish those things and make those better. So that's sort of the way this record came about, was a lot of big ideas, and then I would just kind of mess around with them, and I'm fairly proficient, or at least, uncommonly comfortable with editing on Pro Tools.
Yep.
And so I would take a lot of his drums or voice or anything, any kind of sound, and I'd find the loop, and I'd kind of build loops out of things, in a very kind of tape loopy sort of way. I know there's easier ways to do this, but I've like just locked into a Pro Tools cut and paste collage process.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the songs were sort of had elements of that in there, for better or worse, and that's sort of how this record came about. And I think we would, we were making fun of ourselves, like, we're doing so many loops and things, and in ways that we, sort of reference like 90s electronica, like someone like Tricky or
Absolutely,
something. Sounded like that kind of world. And I think there were a few tracks that had working titles, like, but we don't know we're not from that. We're not from a drum and bass British background, obviously, or even fans necessarily of that, but we just felt like just the terms we were using, these drum loops and these bleeps and bloops and things, we were using it, but what came out, I don't think has any regard for that genre of stuff, and doesn't necessarily sound like that. It still sounds like us, but I think the techniques were much more in the vein of that. So
my understanding is that lyrically, Dean is principally responsible for what is being said, and I'd ask you to verify that in a moment. What I also wanted to wonder about, though, there is how collaborative, or even like based on conversations you've had together, do you find the actual lyrics, are they related to anything you discuss together, or is it just Dean goes away and comes back and you're like, I don't know what the hell's going on there, but I don't know.
Most times I hear the lyrics for the first time is when he's recording them.
Oh, okay.
And I would say I'm always pleasantly surprised. Like, wow, that was fucking great. Where did he come up with that shit?
Yeah.
So that's mostly what it is. I'll even set him up. I guess I can speak more to the technical side, right? That's where one of the reasons we did this record this way is because I've slowly been building up, nice mic preamps and a decent, or not decent, I shouldn't say, a fairly good starting pack of mics to sort of start recording drums and voices and stuff. So I'll build a signal chain for Dean, and then set him up with a session, and I'll just let him record his vocals on his own too. And sometimes I won't hear it till I come back, and he says, "Yeah, can you comp track 1 with track 3 and this one, that one?" And we'll go through and we'll build a vocal track together like that. So it's I don't know what I think. I've been hearing him sing a lot of these things for years, and I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, I just wonder if they're based on, like, I think this material would have been written during a time of tremendous tumultuousness in our world, and I wondered if you picked up on any of that in here, because the phrasing is really haunting and compelling. This record in particular, I don't know, are you guys particular fans of the band Suicide?
Yes. I think, we played some shows with them when they were doing those kind of reunion shows, and I think we played a show in New York. It was kind of a art happening thing, like very close to the end of Alan Vega's time.
Okay, well,
we've seen them a lot.
I just pick up on that vibe a little bit more in sort of the pulsating, just constant building of things, and then the way vocals are employed. It's not the same as Suicide in that regard, but it's just, I don't know. It's almost like
I could see that. There's a kind of aggressive sort of punk electronic
halting
sort of thing that comes out. It's probably closer to Suicide than Tricky or.
That's where I was. Yeah, it's interesting you said Tricky, because some of the bleeps and bloops and synthesized beats, yes. But I actually hear a little more makeshift nature in it, and even sort of, I don't think the tempos are erratic necessarily, but they're a bit odd, given what else is going on with the guitar and whatnot. Like it's off kilter, and that's what I think of when I think of Suicide. And then the vocals even come in sort of haltingly and surprisingly, and it's sort of spare language. Like Dean has fun with violence, just saying the word violence
Yes.
in a way that is sort of more in the vein of like a Velvet Underground approach to attacking a line.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying? So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so I just wonder.
That was I'll give you just a background of because I can't really speak to vocals. I don't know. He does a great job. But that song in particular, "Violence," it was an earlier track that we were doing, in 2019 when we started this record, and we came back to it, looking for material. So I sort of treated everything we had been writing and recording as it's all material that can be, it's all fodder for the machine, right? We could chop it up, sample ourselves, and we've done stuff like that in the past. And, but that particular song, we were listening to it and we weren't particularly proud or excited by the whole of the song, but we did like an intro and a like bridge into the chorus. We're like, those are two kind of good ideas. And I think in the past, what we would have done is then labored, over those two parts and then written, 6 more parts and put something together that didn't really resemble the first thing, but cannibalized a song. I think that's very common in songwriting for bands. Is you write something and then you hate all the parts, so you just cannibalize that intro. Remember that intro that could be good for something else, and you do that. But in this particular case, because we were in such a sampling, cut and paste, digital, all art is valid, all sound is valid kind of way, I literally just kind of looked at him. I was like, cool, we like this part, and I highlighted it. Cool, all right, you like that part? Okay, highlighted that. And then I just looped it out. And I literally just took the 2 parts we liked from the song. I was like, what if that's the song? Yeah. And we listened to it together, and he's like, fuck yeah, give me a microphone. And we did, and he literally wrote the song that afternoon.
Wow.
I think so that song in particular, I think has it speaks to the process and how different this record was and other things, but also just his inventive, that spirit of
impulsiveness,
of
almost like first take, best take kind of notion, maybe a little bit. Yeah.
I think we got that sort of thing. And again, I think maybe it's just because it was the two of us and we didn't, and I guess addressing that idea too of just making a record by ourselves, there wasn't, and at all times, most creative processes you're fraught with insecurity and self-doubt and whatnot. And when you're in a professional studio that you're paying money for, there's an added pressure to that. And then there's usually a professional engineer or producer type person or somebody who you hopefully look up to, but also are maybe a little scared of and don't know what they're sitting over there. You think they're judging you or thinking, oh boy, that guy really can't play guitar. That guy really can't sing. Oh boy, what's going on? So there's a lot of, this self-doubt that's included in any kind of recording process, or at least has been for us in the past. Or, some of it's healthy and it gets you to I want to impress that guy. Look how I'm going to sing my note correctly, and I'm going to do it again. Let's do doubles. Hey, and you get caught up in something and you come back and you hear it and you go, who the fuck made this record? How'd that happen? Why did we make this record that way? And then you go, well, we were under pressure and we had to kind of get it out. And it's all, at the end of the day, it's our record. It's our fault. It's our success. It wins or loses on our shoulders, and we're ultimately the ones who can put it out or not, or like it or not like it. But all the stuff that goes into it, you go, it's good, but it felt weird. It felt awkward. I don't know. Like that guy kept staring at me.
I think people who have not been in recording situations, like that pressure you're talking about, I think the subtext of everything you just said is time. Time is a force, and you don't want to be made to feel like you're wasting a producer or engineer's time. And they might just be sitting there doing nothing until you figure stuff out, and you're paying for all that waiting around. I think the time is something that people don't. I think maybe it's more well known now that records can feel a little half realized because that was the budget, that was the time they had, that was the studio, that's all the studio time a band had. We hear those stories more and have heard those stories more, but. Yeah, I think the general public, if you will, may not as aware of these things. So I appreciate you talking about them. And speaking of time, I'm also mindful of our time today.
Oh gosh, yeah. How are we doing here?
No, we're fine. Everything's fine. Everything's just fine. But all I was getting at is I do want people to check out this album on their own. People helping people. It's really fantastic, and all those sorts of things. And I think we've given them a flavor and a taste of various things that have gone into it. What I wanted to ask you at this point is future plans. If you've got a touring lined up, whether Edmonton's on the agenda yet or not, remains to be seen. And also, if this experience has got you guys already thinking about a next recording, can you speak to some of those things, Randy?
Sure, yeah. So tour is lined up for October and November. Here, mostly in the States. We're doing some Midwest and East Coast dates and some West Coast dates. Unfortunately, Alberta has not yet been booked. However, January is coming up. We know it's a lovely time to be in Alberta. Yeah, that was the last time we were there. We like I said at the beginning, please, anybody listening to this and anywhere you're at, come find us. We are, we're on all the social medias. It's No Age LA on the Instagram, and we're on the Facebook, and I'm mostly checking all that stuff. So, you can find me and say, hey, you told me on that podcast to come talk to you. That'll be me. So, we want to come play shows. We want to come to different towns. It's just, becomes logistical at some point. But yeah, so we have a tour set up, and then hopefully Europe next year and some more parts of the world next year. Again, it's like you've noted, the pandemic isn't really over.
No.
So it's still difficult, and we're not back to where we were prior to this thing. So it's hard to travel, and best laid plans often go awry.
Yes.
I also have a solo record out that actually just came out today.
Oh, congratulations!
If interested in it's an ambient solo record. Today when we're recording, but probably a few weeks ago when you're hearing this. But if you want to go find that, I'm Randy S. Randall. Is that what I am on Instagram? Or Randy Randall on Instagram? If you Google Randy Randall or try to find me, there's records out there. I would appreciate it if you go to my Bandcamp.
Okay.
Go to Bandcamp and buy from us directly, from No Age directly. I in the same little Radio Shack vomitorium. I pack up T-shirts and records all day long, and give them to my post office, my postal person. So again, I guess this is kind of the plug part at the end. But yeah, if you want to check us out, Drag City's a beautiful label, and they put out the No Age records, and Dead Strange, who is Oliver from A Place to Bury Strangers, his solo imprint is putting out my solo record. And
he was just on the show last year or this year. I can't remember.
Isn't he great?
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Again, fellow kind of gear nerd, twiddler of electronics and things. So yeah, I would love for everybody to come check it out and get in touch with us, find us, and I'm just really excited that this record's finally out and the world is in a place where we can, put records out and people will notice. We did do a record before this called Goons Be Gone that literally came out, at a really rough time in the pandemic. We just we didn't pull it because we didn't want to have a 2-year-old record out there. We just thought, well, the record's come out. So there's a lot of stuff to discover. And we also have several back catalog records on Sub Pop that are really fun, that you could have a youthful Dean's voice is about an octave or two higher there. So, yeah. And my guitar skills are not as good as they are now.
Oh, get out of here. No, you're great. You guys are great. And yeah, people should check out the back catalog. I was actually just this week revisiting Velcro Rippers. Wonderful. That's early days. And I just wanted, it's great. People should check out No Age. You've done a marvelous job plugging all the ways they can do that. So thank you, Randy. I appreciate that.
Okay, good.
As we're speaking,
professional here.
Yeah, as people are hearing this, this record is going to be out on September 16th, which, as I say, as people are hearing this, is in the next couple of days. If we can go out on a song right now from the record, I wonder, Randy, if you can pick one and tell us why you chose it.
Yeah, let's play Slow Motion Shadow off of People Helping People, the new No Age record on Drag City. It's a song that I used all of my engineering wilds on, and it just sounds like a Guided by Voices track at the end of the day. It just it sounds like a Bob Pollard 4-track. But I literally took some drums that Dean had, put them on a 4-track, wrote more guitar to it, and then presented it to him as an option. Like, what do you think of this song? And he's like, this is great. So then we had to kind of dirty up his vocals to sort of sublimate him into this kind of like lo-fi pop sort of ditty.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a beautiful description, and I think it's apt. So I'm happy to share that with people now. So let's just do that. This is Slow Motion Shadow from the wonderful new record People Helping People by No Age. Randy, this was super fun. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope we talk again someday, and I hope I see you in Edmonton, and I wish you the best of luck with everything in the future.
Thanks so much, Vish. I appreciate it. It's great talking to you.
Well, thanks again to Randy Randall from No Age for being on the show and appearing on the 717th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available wherever you get your podcast. If you can't find an episode that you're looking for, or if you want to learn more about me, sign up for my monthly newsletter, please visit vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook or follow the show on Twitter at Vish Creative, or you can follow me directly on Twitter and on Instagram at Vishkhanna, at Vishkhanna. Also, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to sustain this podcast. $6 or more a month grants you access to exclusive content, and you get early access to new episodes like this one. And if you're interested in receiving a Creative Control t-shirt, just message me on Patreon once you've made your donation, and I'll get you one while supplies last. What else can I tell you? I think I've said this many times before, but yeah, it's flexible, right? So if you started at 6 and you want to go up or down, you can. And people do that all the time, and I think that's cool. And it's kind of you to even consider supporting this show. This is the primary source of income for this show, as I'm speaking to you, a very modest Patreon. So if you're into doing that, supporting the show in that way, please consider doing so at patreon.com/Creative Control. Thanks again to the fine Alberta record retailer, Blackbird Music, which you can learn more about at blackbird.ca. Also want to thank Pizza Trocadero, the bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in my old stomping grounds of Guelph, Ontario. And also I want to thank Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. I didn't do very much stomping in Hamilton. Maybe a little bit. I probably stomped around. I'm a bit heavy-footed. Maybe that's too much information about me. Anyway, thanks to Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario, and all those other places for their in-kind support for this show. Always thanks to my friend Jim Guthrie. He lends me some music. He makes this wonderful music. You can learn more about Jim at his website, jimguthrie.org. You can hear some of it right now behind me as I'm speaking. And finally, thank you for listening to this episode featuring Randy from No Age. I hope you will check out the new No Age album, People Helping People, and I hope if you're new to this show, you consider subscribing to this podcast or following it and telling your friends all about it to help spread the word about the show, and also spread the word about No Age. Great band. Randy was great. I really enjoyed this one. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you very, very soon. Take care of yourselves out there. Bye for now.